Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alistair Cowden, and I am lucky enough to be the chair of this company. So a special welcome to all shareholders, those both recent and long-term. Very much appreciate you coming and taking the interest and giving us your support. And I can assure you there's not a day that goes by where management and board doesn't think about shareholder returns. That's why we're here. So today what I want to do is, first of all, we've got the formal business of the meeting, but I've got the talking stick, so I want to say a few things first. Then we'll do the formal business. Then Mike Anderson, your MD, will give us an update on the company. And then afterwards, we'd like to invite you to join us for a drink and a more informal chat. But anyway, what I wanted to say firstly is a little bit about culture and what's commonly called ESG. So a connection to land, place, and culture is one that's really important. It's something that we acknowledge and understand. We, Firefinch, operate in communities who are much less privileged than we are. We understand the impact, both positive and negative, that we can make in communities. But what we want to do is we want to make a positive difference where we operate. We want to create more jobs and more highly skilled jobs and high-paying jobs in Mali. We want to improve the quality of life of the people who work for us and for those in the communities around us. Mali is a poor country, and we have both a moral and a commercial imperative to make a difference. And that responsibility is born out of respect for those people, and we embrace it. So in that context of respect for country, community, culture, I'd like to acknowledge the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation who had the custody of this land in which we meet. And similarly, I'd also like to acknowledge the people of Mali in our workforce and offer our respect to them. We couldn't, without the support that we get in Mali, we couldn't operate. So the Malians are really good people, really good-humoured, great workers, and we are really proud that our permanent workforce is only 2 expatriates. We have a Malian workforce, and that's quite an achievement. Our senior management, all Malian, and we actively employ local, buy local, support and empower local businesses. And we also invest in health and education in those communities. So moving on, when we first looked at acquiring Marilla, and then we bought it and went out and told the world that's a little while ago now, people would ask me what kept me awake at night. Well, there were a lot of things back then, but really the one that kept me awake most was people, getting quality people. And I need to have no worries. We've got really great people, and I think we'll continue to attract the best there are, both here in Australia and in Mali. So on that theme of people, I'd like to introduce your board to you. Firstly, Brendan Borg, who's in this phone because he's based in Victoria and he can't be here with the recent COVID events, and Mark Hepburn. So this last year was not always easy for the company. And when we were without friends and we were working very hard to land Marilla and that deal, and no one knew, Brendan and Mark really put the shoulder to the wheel, and they offered great support to Eric and myself, and without them, you would not have this company you've got today. So on your behalf, I thank them. And in addition, the board has been strengthened. We have Brad Gordon on the end there. Brad brings what I'd like to call Kalgoorlie mining smarts to the company. He's got deep operational experience and also deep African experience. And his experience in running the company Acacia was a £4 billion company. Well, that's our target. That's what we want to beat. So let's see if we can get to that scale. And it's interesting, Acacia also had ex-Barrick assets, much the same as Marilla. We also have Brett Fraser sitting next to Mark, who brings really a long commercial, board, audit, financial, and also African-specific skills to us. And Brett guided the board through what was a really difficult audit an annual report for this company. We'd only owned Marilla for 7 weeks before we had to do this annual report and accounts. It was not without its challenges. And he formed a great partnership with Eric, our CFO, who showed great patience and commitment to get that done. And also, I'd like to acknowledge Eric, because he, when there wasn't very many of us in landing that Marilla deal, Eric was there every step of the way. So thank you, Eric. Next, the Marilla workforce, led by Drissa Arama. That workforce had a couple of choices when change happened, but what they did is they embraced the change and welcomed the new owners, everyone in this room, Firefinch, and embraced that vision we have for Marilla the Gorilla. So thank you, Drissa. And also thank you to many people in the team, some who are not here today, Andrew Taplin, Chief Operating Officer, Bill Oliver, and many others. So just the year in review, it's been a big, big year since the last annual general meeting. Essentially a company reborn, transformed, and most importantly, lots of wealth created for shareholders, workers in Mali and our communities. So on Goulamina, we completed a feasibility study which showed a very attractive returns. We told the world we're going to demerge Goulamina and generate, hopefully, realize wealth for shareholders by everyone will get an entitlement to a new share in a new ASX-listed lithium company. And we've also initiated a Macquarie-led process to find a commercial solution to funding and offtake for Goulamina, and we're very hopeful we'll be able to talk to you more about that in the near future. In the same way, there were dark days when we were doing Marilla deal and couldn't talk about it. Let's just say we're in a similar position now. So on Marilla, as our MD is very fond of saying, it's the deal of the century. It's certainly the best deal I've ever done in my career, and the other phrase I like to use is Bill Beeman, the king of Kalgoorlie, made Northern Star. His moment was a Dundee purchase from a major. I think this company has the same foundations with purchasing Marilla. We raised the $74 million paid for Marilla. We assumed operatorship. Most importantly, we didn't break it. You know, we had enormous opportunities to stuff this thing up, and we haven't. And then we've grown the asset. From no formal resource estimate from what we inherited, we're now at 2.4 million ounces, and 1 million ounces or more in reserves. That's going to grow further. We've refurbished the plant, resumed open pit mining, started crushing and grinding. Basically, everything we said we wanted to do, we've done. And probably the most exciting bit is we're drilling some quite tasty drill holes. They're really quite nice. I think K3 was 21 at 13.5 grams. And that's just starting. I think it's very exciting. So on the performance of the company, share price is the thing that matters to you most. At the last annual general meeting, I think we were 8 cents. We were around just, we were a little bit higher, but there's a bit of a storm in the teacup over events in Mali, but we're around 40 cents. And if you participated in the capital raising in October, you've more than doubled your money. So Mike will talk to you later about, you know, we're already a substantive company, 300 million market cap and more, and how we might grow that. So just one last thing. I'd like to thank those shareholders who stuck with the company through thick and thin. Some shareholders were less than generous with their comments when we were trying to build the company back, but there were many who were very positively minded, and I appreciated that really. It was terrific to know that you had real support there. So I ask you all, there's always going to be bumps in the road. Please show Mike the same support, very capable chap. I've known Mike for probably nearly 15 years. First came across him, we both had companies at Cloncurry, copper companies. And in a way, we were competing in the same market space. And I was always jealous. Mike landed this deal with Xstrata, which at the time blew everyone away. I was really jealous that he did that. So I'm hoping he can outperform here again. And I'm really excited at what he's going to lead us through in this next few years. So anyway, that's all I've got to say. And I'll go through the boring bits now, the formal business. So I assume everyone's registered at the front desk. That's all done. And we have a quorum, and we'll be voting by poll rather than a show of hands. As was permitted this year, the Notice of Annual General Meeting and explanatory statement was distributed to all registered members on 28th of April 21 and made available on the website. Therefore, sufficient notice of the meeting has been given, and unless anyone has any objections, I will take the notice of meeting as read. As we move through the items of business to be considered, and particularly the resolutions which are set out in the notice of meeting, the full text of those resolutions will come up on the screen behind me. We have some 176 proxies received, and you can see the results up there on the screen. And as I advised in the notice of meeting, I intend to vote all available and authorised proxies that I hold as chairman in favour of the resolution. The minutes of the last annual general meeting are available for inspection, and they've been accepted by the board as true and correct if anyone should want to see them. So the first agenda item is to receive and consider the financial statements for the year ended December 2020, together with the director's report, an auditor's report, and the company's annual report. The Corporations Act requires that we lay out the financial statements and reports before the meeting, and those reports, including the financial statements, have been all circulated to shareholders, and I have tabled those documents. There is no need for members to vote to approve the financial statements, but you're welcome to ask questions or comment on them. And Helen Bathurst here from PricewaterhouseCoopers is our auditor, who did a fantastic job with the challenges that I mentioned. She's here in attendance personally, and if there are any questions, we can address them now. Are there any questions on the company's financial statements? If not, we'll now move to consider the resolutions and vote by poll. So I just have to run through the procedure for polling. So as chairman of the meeting, I'm authorised to demand a poll, and I appoint Computershare, our share registry, to conduct the poll and calculate the votes and report the results to me. So the procedure for the poll is that only shareholders that have received a poll ballot paper at the time of registration are able to participate. And I'll take questions on each resolution from shareholders or the representative who hold an admission card. Questions should only relate to the resolution being voted on. So if you have a question, just please raise your hand, tell me who you are, and whether you're a proxy or a shareholder. So the people entitled to vote in the poll are all shareholders, representatives, attorneys, and proxy holders, and you've got the green cards, and your ballot paper is on the back like that one. So, where are we? Lost my plot. So there's a lot of words here in this that we've got to go through. On the reverse of each one is your ballot paper and instructions. And proxy holders have attached to their admission card a summary of proxy votes, which details the voting instructions. By completing the ballot paper, you are deemed to have voted in accordance with those instructions. In respect of any open votes the proxy holder may be entitled to cast, you need to mark mark beside the box in question how you wish to cast your vote. And shareholders also need to mark the box to indicate how you wish to cast your vote. So please ensure you print your name where indicated and sign the ballot paper. And when you're finished filling in your voting paper, lodge with the ballot box at the back and to make sure they're all counted. And if you need any help, please ask. If you lodge the proxy and wish for this to remain in place, and you're not required to do anything, if you'd like to withdraw your proxy, please speak now and go and see Computershare, and then you'll be issued a paper. It should be noted that Resolution 1 is non-binding, and Resolutions 2 to 11 before the meeting are ordinary resolutions requiring a simple majority of votes cast by shareholders present or by proxy. The text of each resolution and the proxies received will be put on the screen behind me as we work through it. Apologise for all that, but we are required to do all this. There's a lot more words, so you can all have a little snooze if you want. Resolution 1. The first resolution for today's meeting relates to the adoption of the remuneration report as set out in the annual report. Please note that restricted voters, being key management personnel and related parties, are not permitted to vote in this resolution unless they're doing as a proxy. Or in the case where I have been appointed proxy, and the appointment expressly authorizes me to exercise the proxy. Shareholders should note the vote on this resolution is advisory only and doesn't bind the directors of the company. So a summary of the proxies are there. Are there any questions? So if there's no questions, I put the resolution, and could you please vote by marking your ballot paper if you haven't already done so. Resolution 2 relates to the election of Brendan Borg, who retires by way of resolution and, being eligible, offers himself for re-election. Brendan is a consultant geologist who's specialised in the battery materials sector, including lithium, graphite, cobalt, and has been involved in many successful projects in an investment or operational capacity. And as I said earlier, Brendan showed his worth to me in spades during the difficult times some nearly 12 months ago. He's got more than 20 years' experience, ex-Rio Tinto, a fine chap, and he's considered by the board to be an independent director. The board, other than Brendan, who has to abstain, unanimously recommend that shareholders vote in favour. A summary of proxies are behind you, and are there any questions on electing Brendan? If not, I put the resolution and ask that you could now vote on it by marking your ballot paper. Resolution number 3. Resolution 3 relates to the election of Brett Fraser. Brett was appointed as a casual vacancy to the board on the 11th of November and retires in accordance with the Constitution, and, being eligible, offers himself for re-election. Brett, as I mentioned before, is an experienced ASX director, currently on the board of Sundance, who we probably all know, African iron ore company. He's got deep knowledge, over 30 years of corporate finance experience, and already proven himself to be a great asset to the company in leading the audit committee and contributing elsewhere. Brett is considered by the board to be an independent director, and the board, other than Brett, unanimously recommend that shareholders vote in favour of his re-election. A summary of proxies is above me there on the screen, and again I ask if there are any questions on the resolution. And if there are none, I then invite you to vote on the resolution by marking your ballot paper. And if you'll excuse me, there's a lot of words. Resolution 4 relates to the election of Bradley Gordon. Brad was appointed as a casual vacancy to the board on the 1st of April 2021 and retires in accordance with the Constitution, and, being eligible, offers himself for re-election. Brad, as I've mentioned before, is a very seasoned resource industry executive with 30 years of experience in gold, copper and mineral sands, and I mentioned his tenure as chief executive of Acacia Mining and other companies such as Placidome, Emperor and Intrepid over the years. And Brad is also considered by the board to be an independent director. And again, the board, other than Brad, who unanimously recommend that shareholders vote in favour of Resolution 4. And the summary of proxies is there behind me. And again, I invite questions, if any. And if not, I invite you to put your marks on the ballot paper. Resolution 5 relates to the approval to the increase of the aggregate amount of the fees the company can pay to its non-executive directors by $200,000 per annum, up to an aggregate of $600,000 per annum. The reason we're doing this is twofold. Firstly, we haven't. The company has changed, and we haven't. This has been in place for some 4 years, and the demands placed on your non-executive directors, with overseas production and developing what's going to be hopefully a spectacular mid-tier company, production, exploration, development, and also the complexities of a second project in Goulamina. We want to attract, retain and reward the best as non-executive directors. And we've only just had this board start to function, all 6 of us together in this last little while, and I have to tell you that I'm delighted by the calibre of the board. So the directors obviously are not permitted to vote in this resolution, or unless they're a proxy, or where I have been appointed proxy and been authorised to exercise that proxy. So a summary of the proxies are given above, and again I invite any questions on the resolution. There being none, I again invite you to make your mark in the ballot paper. Resolution 6 relates to the approval of issue of performance rights to Michael Anderson, our Managing Director, of some 8 weeks, and there's been a spectacular 8 weeks. Passing this resolution will allow the company to issue 6,800,000 performance rights to Michael under the company's awards plan in a similar fashion to those already issued to other senior executives. I have to stress that those performance rights are only exercisable once they have satisfied vesting criteria, and those vesting criteria are linked to things such as share price appreciation, gold production, ounces in the ground at Marilla, safety, and we're also that communities and ESG performance. And I have to say, those metrics, if Mike achieves those, he deserves every single one of those shares. And they're set out in detail in the notice of meeting. So obviously, again, Michael and associates cannot vote in this resolution unless he has a proxy holder who has specified that how to direct them in the same way as the other resolutions. And the board, other than Michael, unanimously recommend that shareholders vote in favour of this resolution. And the proxies are there above you for you to look at. And again, I invite comment or questions if there are any. If none, I invite you again to put your mark in the ballot paper. Resolution 7 relates to a potential termination benefit which may be payable to Michael. Pursuant to the resolution we've just put, it's proposed that performance rights will be issued subject to the awards plan. The awards plan provides that the performance rights will automatically vest if there's a change of control of Firefinch, i.e. a takeover bid, or Michael ceases to be employed for a specific reason which is set out, such as something terrible happens, and we don't want to think about that. This automatic vesting, the way the Corps Act works, is considered to be a termination benefit. It's a ridiculous thing, and the wording is nonsense. The way this happens is a really good thing happens. We get a bid for the company, we all make an awful lot of money. But this is a requirement by Corps Act that we have to go through this. So obviously, officers who are entitled to participate in a termination benefit cannot vote, and any restricted investor who is appointed as a proxy cannot vote, and any such votes will be disregarded unless there's specific direction from that proxy holder. And again, for me, if I've been appointed proxy holder, I can direct the votes accordingly. So the proxy votes are up there for you. And are there any questions on? Yes, sir?
Just one question. If Michael moves across to the new lifting company, would that be triggered?
No.
Right. Okay.
I guess I'll just say a few things on that demerger. There are some quite complex issues which are involved around Tax and Corporations Act and listing rules around many of these things. And a lot of that has been put to one side until we're clear on the commercial way ahead for Goulamina. But we've got provisional advice on all those. But no, now the circumstances are there's a bid, or there's a Michael passes away, and by discretion we decide to vest to his family effectively. Those are the two real circumstances. Thank you. Okay, well, being no further questions, I invite you to make your mark in the ballot paper. Resolution 8. Yep, thank you. Similar resolution, two resolutions for Brett Fraser to issue 750,000 performance rights to Brett under the awards plan in the same manner we already talked about. And again, they're only exercisable once we've satisfied vesting criteria, which again are linked to the same kind of criteria as I mentioned for Mike. And again, there's the same prohibitions on voting for his associates and so forth. I'll share the pain of going through them all individually. And the board, other than Brett, is again recommending unanimously that shareholders vote in favour of Resolution 8, and the proxies are there up behind me for you to view. And again, I invite any questions. Being none, I'll again invite you to vote on your ballot paper. Resolution 9 is the same one which we just dealt with Mike, the potential termination benefit which arises in the same circumstances. And again, Brett cannot vote, and proxy holders who are restricted or related parties cannot vote. And the summary of the proxies are set out above me there. And again, any questions on that, and the same answers apply to that. Being no questions, I again invite you to mark the ballot paper. Resolution 10, again, the same thing for Brad. Again, 750,000 performance rights under the awards plan, with the same share price reserves, production, well, actually production and also the demerger are part of the terms. They're slightly different from Mike's. And again, there's the same prohibitions on Brad and his associates and proxy holders from voting on this as required. And again, the board unanimously recommends that the shareholders vote in favour of the resolution, and the proxies are behind me. And again, I invite questions. There being no questions, again, I invite you to mark your ballot paper. Resolution 11 is similarly for the third and last time now. We have the potential termination benefit, which is potentially payable to Brad as a result of issuing performance rights. And again, this is the automatic vest if there's a change of control and so forth. And again, there's the same prohibitions on associates and restricted personnel from voting in favour. And the proxies, again, are behind me there. And again, I invite questions. There being none, I again invite you to mark your ballot paper. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience in going through the formal part of the business. And I ask that you can now make sure that Computershare who are going around collect your ballot. And if you need any help, please indicate. If you need more time or any further questions. So nope, not quite there yet. Are there any other votes to be cast? If not, I'll declare that poll closed. And I believe the procedure now is that Computershare go away and do the magic, and in a few hours they do all their auditing and blah blah blah, and they report back to the company, and then Eric and Sarah will then organise that those results are posted on the website and on ASX. So the poll procedure makes it a little more, or we can wait here for 4 or 5 hours or whatever until they do that. That then completes the formal business. Are there any other questions, I guess, of the board before I hand over to Mike to give you a presentation on Firefinch? If not, Michael.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and as Alistair said, thank you very much not only for your attendance but for your support as shareholders. It is greatly appreciated. It has been a bit of a whirlwind start for myself, and if I can maybe even just take a step back, a couple of months ago, I genuinely was not looking to re-enter the ranks of the executives, having been working with the Taurus Fund for the last 10 years. I was aware of this acquisition. Not only have I known Alistair for 15 years, I've also known Mark a similar length of time, and we were talking about the Marilla acquisition back sort of third quarter last year with my Taurus hat on, and so we were evaluating it as a potential West African investment, Taurus having made a number of those quite successfully. And so, I was already aware, but as I say, not looking to take on this role or any like it, to be honest. But it didn't take me long after having received a call to ask me would I be interested, a few conversations, particularly with Alistair and Mark, to work out that this was a fantastic opportunity, not just for me, but for all of us as shareholders and stakeholders in this company. And the last couple of months has absolutely borne that out. The progress, building on the foundation that was laid by the acquisition, I think our progress has been tremendous. It's a very exciting time, and I think that's going to continue. Our news flow has been prolific, and our style will be to tell you what we're doing, tell you when we've done it, and tell you what we're going to do next. It is a somewhat unique offering with both Marilla and Goulamina, both assets in Mali, and Marilla is a historical world-class mine. It had its heyday between 2000 and 2009, when it used to mine grades up to 14, 15 grams a ton, and through its life has already produced over 7 million ounces of gold. As Alistair said, we've already defined another 2.4 million ounces of resources both across Marilla and the satellites, and that will not be the end of it, I can guarantee you of that. Our drilling has hardly yet started, and we've just been talking today as a board about some of the very attractive targets that lie in front of us, and there will be plenty of news flow as our drilling continues over the coming months and beyond, and the resource reserve work will continue, and the mine life is set to grow. The Goulamina asset, demonstrably world-class. The feasibility proved that. I think we are running a very effective process. I say we, Macquarie, are here today, and with their help, very pleased with the attention that we've attracted and the progress of those discussions. As Alistair did say, also, it's hard to say anything when you're in the middle of trying to make a deal, but we have pretty much committed to trying to bring that to a conclusion this quarter. That's our goal. As soon as we can, we'll brief you on what we hope to be another transformational transaction. Been a pretty successful period in terms of value creation over the last few weeks and months. As Alistair said, raised the money at 16 cents to acquire this asset. Have had a pretty stellar run in recent weeks. But that's not the end of it. None of us invested because we think this is a 30-cent or a 40-cent stock. I think the upside for us here, once we deliver on the production potential at Marilla, is to match those market capitalizations amongst our peer groups that are 2 and 3 times what we sit at today. So this story is only just getting started, and we all certainly look to keep you informed as we deliver on the potential. The strategy is pretty simple. Marilla is a world-class ore body that was walked away from 10, 12 years ago. There was no more drilling done in that time, and it was a different time, different gold price environment, different cut-offs being applied to the ore body. It was a joint venture between the then Randgold, which was taken over by Barrick, Randgold and AngloGold. They had very different drivers than what we have here today. 150,000, 200,000 ounces of production to us will be very material. Not so to a JV between 2 majors. And I think their reluctance to invest the capital to either cut back Marilla or go deeper was constrained by a gold price which would have been sub $1,000 an ounce. And I guess they had different priorities. And it's hard to fault Randgold and Mark Bristow in particular with everything that he has gone on to achieve. But that's our opportunity. And we're coming at it from a very different perspective, one that we now want to grow a company from. And I'm very confident that we're just at the beginning of that process. Marilla itself, as I say, over 2 million ounces of resource, but we shouldn't forget about our satellites, where in the 6 months since we concluded this transaction, we've already doubled the resource base there. It is modest. We went from just over 100,000 ounces to now over 200, but that trajectory is quite indicative, we believe, of the potential here. That the more we drill, the more we will find, and that might sound profound, but this is a highly prolific belt that is as yet far from fully tested. And that extends to the regional package of over 680 square kilometres, where we have multiple targets to follow up on. And quickly, I think the question will become of us, what next? Once we have established Marilla as a 150 to 200,000 ounces of production on an annual basis, I think we can optimise that. But then what next? And that for us, I think, is to get on the consolidation path, looking at becoming not just a single mine producer, but peers and precedents like Perseus, Teranga, others who became 1, 2, 3 mine producers, and not just 200,000 ounces per annum, but 3, 4, 500,000 ounces of annual production. Now, that's a very achievable path, and one which will create significant value for all shareholders. The demerger of Goulamina will also give people the chance to participate in the success of that asset. And we have got a lot of shareholders who first invested in this company because of the lithium, we know that. And here you're going to get a chance to own a piece of paper in both companies. And I think the upside that we see in Goulamina is beyond demonstrable, and we want to be there. We'll retain our oversight. I think that's an important aspect in Mali, that the government there see our ongoing stewardship here, and we want to be there making sure that the value does get created. As Alistair said, I did coin this phrase, and I don't think I've got a history of being outlandish in my comments, but Marilla acquisition on a per ounce basis, $15 an ounce, is absolutely standout. And it's that metric alone that I think led me down the path of calling it the deal of the century, or at least a contender for it. I attended a pay dirt presentation about a month ago now, where a couple of major companies were talking about their exploration and the cost of discovery per ounce. And the guy from Goldfields was very proud, justifiably so, of the fact that they were finding ounces for about $63. And he said he would do that for as long as he could do that more cheaply than he could buy them for. Well, we bought Marilla for less than $15 an ounce, so that was a pretty telling metric. But it isn't just the resource. We've inherited a 4.5 million tonne per annum processing facility that we had to refurbish, but we've done that for a modest amount of money. We picked up a workforce who are very skilled, Malayan, as Alistair has described, and who are drilled in the habits of major companies. And I think as a junior wannabe mid-tier company, that's a tremendous leg up for us. We're dealing with people who already know how to operate at that level, whose skills and commitment are clear. And I think the prospectivity as well just offers huge upside for us, and what a great situation for us to be in. Hence my enthusiasm and excitement for the opportunity. The metrics we've talked about are again here, the production, where it will place us amongst our peers on the ASX, and those who are producing 150 to 200,000 ounces, the likes of West African Resources, a company that I was involved with my Taurus hat on. They're producing over 200,000 ounces, and they're capped at $900 million. That's what we can aspire to over the next short term, and then, as I say, grow from there. Our cost estimates are we believe, quite robust, but also conservative. We've relied on Barrick's estimates of G&A and power costs and processing and milling costs, and we believe there's plenty of room to chip away at those. But even with what we know today, which, as I said, expected to be multiple iterations of, we're forecasting around $600 million of free cash flow over the next 7 years of mine life based on the current reserves, and that will grow and I think offer plenty of upside. The trajectory of reducing costs and increasing production, pretty clear. combination of what we've done already this year with the tailings retreatment. Now we're into the mining of the satellites. We will be producing about 50,000 ounces in 2021. But that'll grow very quickly in 2022 to over 120,000 ounces as we get back into the mining of the Marilla proper pit. The Marilla super pit, as we're calling it. 2023, 173,000 ounces, and 2024, back over 200,000 ounces. And I think by the time we get there, we'll have done an awful lot more drilling, resource and reserve definition, and we expect to sustain that level of production going forward. The stage strategy is, again, pretty simple. We've pretty much completed the tailings retreatment. There's a little bit left that will help us through the remainder of this year. But we are, as I say, already back into the mining of the satellites. Marilla Pit 5 actually sits right on the flank of the Marilla Pit itself. Beyond that, we'll be getting into Viper and Chola, and still drilling there. Still haven't closed out the resource and reserve potential of those satellites. But the main prize is to get on with our dewatering, to get into the heart of Marilla by about Q3 next year, and that's what will drive the keeping the mill full and generating those larger production levels. The blue sky, I've talked about, the drill bit will define that for us, and I know that Bill Oliver and Simon McCracken, our two senior geos here in Perth, are licking their lips at that potential, and our job to give them every encouragement. The top photo there, you'll see Marilla Pit 5, you'll see just how close it is to Marilla, and to some extent it is the same ore body. But what we're finding there is hopefully an indicator and demonstrating a potential upside that exists. There is absolutely no way that this ore body has given up all it's going to. And for us to get into the satellite potential, as demonstrated by the recent results at K3, again, as Alistair mentioned, 21 metres at 13 grams a tonne. We find a bit more of that. It won't be long before we're ticking up the resource reserve grade from the 1.5 gram per tonne level that we currently sit at. But it's what sits beneath Marilla that really excites us. There is very little drilling outside of the historical pit shell. And as I say, not a hole that's really been drilled in the last 12 years there. And our job is to get on with that pretty smartly, and you can expect some news flow as we move forward in the next few weeks and months. And what we are looking for is repeats of those ultra high grades, as I say, in its heyday, 14, 15 grams a tonne. You can see in the purple there, the mined out areas, but it's plunging to the right hand corner of that slide, where we have a historical intersection at 56 metres, just under 5 grams a tonne. Our view is that may well sustain an underground operation, and if we were feeding our mill with 4 and 5 gram material, not 1.5 gram material, then that seriously improves the economics, and we won't die wondering on that proposition. The regional exploration upside, huge anomalism here. There's a lot of regional soil work that's been done, far from fully tested, but there's really been no modern exploration here again in the last 10, 12 years. What this company's predecessors in Birimium and even Mali Lithium did was constrained by budgets and to some extent techniques, and it's I think our intention to remove those constraints and make sure we fully test this highly prospective package. Just then briefly, I think Alice has covered most of the reality of where we sit with Goulamina today. The DFS was put on the shelf demonstrating the credentials of the project, but Mali Lithium wasn't in a position to take it forward itself. We now have a very mature partnering process that's been taken to the point of having some real opportunity, bird in the hand here, hopefully, that we can brief you on in the coming weeks. And from there, the demerger strategy is designed to generate a second plank of value for shareholders. I'm sure plenty in the room have got questions about what's going on in Mali at the moment. We've covered a fair bit about what we intend to do with the local community and giving back and growing our relationships there. But it is, it's obviously would be remiss of us not to talk about, the events of this week, where we've seen, a little bit of instability, to say the least, in the government ranks. But you know what? It's business as usual for us on the ground. Has been at every turn. When a similar thing happened back in August last year, there was no disruption at Marilla, and life goes on. And often the risks in Africa are perceived rather than real in terms of operating the ground. We get that from this far away. But myself and most of this board have got extensive experience in Africa, and it holds no real fears for us to navigate that landscape and to, in time, continue to grow and build our relationships with the government. And I hope that it will demonstrate to people how little fear we have for it. And myself and Andrew Tapman are on the plane tomorrow night over there to visit Marilla and to carry on with the focus of everything that we have on the projects there, both Marilla and Gulamina. And, as I say, very much business as usual. So, key takeaways that, we have acquired here one of Africa's great gold mines, and it's our job to make it great again, and I think we're very much on the path to doing that. The resource and reserve inventory has already been demonstrated, but just the beginning. We will rapidly grow back to that 200,000 ounces per annum, but that's not a ceiling for us by any stretch, not just here, but ultimately with our growth ambitions. And we want to grow Firefinch into a genuine mid-tier gold company. The lithium asset will grow a life of its own. In time, there'll be a separate board and management running that company, and I'm sure it'll have its own ambitions to do exactly the same as we're trying to do with Marilla. The discussions are well advanced, and we do look forward to being able to provide more detail on those in due course. So look, that's all I'm going to say today. Happy to take any questions either here now or over a beer downstairs. I am, I believe, the newest member of the Celtic Club, and more than happy to shout shareholders a drink, and thank you for your support. Thank you.
Any questions for Mike? Go on.
First of all, huge thanks to the board, Eric, Andrew, the wider team in Perth and Marley for the last 12 months and all the hard work there. It really is a transformational turnaround, and I don't think any shareholder kind of thought we'd be where we are today. So thank you. My question's around the exploration campaign ahead. Obviously very exciting times. My understanding is we have 2 to 3 rigs on the ground at the moment. With all the targets out there, is there any intent to really ramp that number of rigs on site up even more?
Absolutely. So we have 2 at the moment.
Yep.
A third one coming, and we're very ably assisted by Capital Drilling. A very good partnership there. I think, again, we've been talking as a board today about all the opportunity, and I think it is beholden on us to make sure we're equipped to go aggressively on 2 things. One, dewatering this pit as quickly as we can, because that's going to afford us a far more cost-effective opportunity to drill as we get down to the benches and whatnot. But then in terms of the satellites and the regional potential across all 3 aspects there, I think, as I say, don't want to die wondering about the potential. We do have to fund that, of course, and I think, there's a few planks in place to do that. We're running a debt process at the minute, and Graham from PCF is here with us. That again is close to delivering us some indication of what the appetite is there. Of course, I told you I was looking at it with my Taurus hat on. I'm very much hopeful that they'll be interested. We're talking to Sprott, Orion, quite a number of other parties who are familiar and comfortable in the West African space. And at the end of the day, the equity markets are always there as an opportunity. My job, and I've been doing a fair bit of interaction, connecting with my networks and building on the relationships that the company had, so that we can give the board options to chart the path forward, to do justice to all this potential.
One question I have with this coup, as it is where it is, do you have any relationships with any of these parties, or you just shut your eyes and pray?
We know all the ministers, and Seydou Semega, our country manager, is very well connected. And I guess we need the sort of the next week or 2 to play out till we see who's back in the various roles. It's not a matter of shutting our eyes, to be honest. Their business is their business. It's for us to wait for the dust to settle and then re-engage with the relevant parties. But we're well enough connected to do that at the right time.
I think I might just add one comment Mike today when we were talking about this at the board meeting. In his 10 years with Taurus operating, lending money into countries all over the place, Africa, Asia, whatever. Only one place at the Taurus go where they had an asset expropriated, New South Wales. I think there's a lot of snobbery about this, about Africa. If you were Chinese and trying to invest in Australia, you'd say the sovereign risk was huge. So Resolute been operating, 20 years? Never had an issue. So I think you've got to get a perspective on these things. I thought that was an absolutely brilliant comment, that the only place that ever sold an asset was New South Wales.
So are you optimistic that all this will blow over in a month?
Absolutely. As it did the last time.
And is it the same people?
Yep.
Is that right?
It's the military. So
No,
the
I
military.
understand that, but you'd think they'd deal with them once they've been put to bed and put it to bed.
Well, you know, people in glass houses should throw stones. How many prime ministers have we had in the last 7 years?
Oh, it's a bit different.
I don't know that it is.
Okay.
I don't know that it is.
Okay.
And it doesn't hold any fears for us as a company or a management team.
So maybe just explain.
So no one gets shot?
No, so that's probably a really
Totally
important
bloodless.
point.
Totally bloodless.
So what happened was that the Prime Minister and President before there was instability last year were clearly corrupt. There was an election process where the polling was that the opposition would win. It went off to the Electoral Commission, and lo and behold, they didn't win. Instability then happened, strikes and protests in Mali. And the Malian people are not aggressive people. There was instability and unhappiness, and that built and built and built, and the military came in, as they often do in West Africa, and removed the government. They then appointed a government. There was regional consultation. The regional group of countries, ECOWAS, came. They reached a compromise. So they appointed a new government, the military. They included, after consultation, and they promised new elections. People got unhappy again because there was not a lot happening, so they thought, and there were some strikes in Mali. The government did a reshuffle, and they left the military out. They kicked them out. So what happened? The military said, hang on, guys, came back again. These things happen all the time, but all through this, nothing happened. I think the last time the banks were closed for 2 days. So we were trying to raise $74 million the last time in the middle of this, and we still got the money. Greg at the back will remember that. It's a fact of life in Africa. So you embrace risk and reward by going there. You couldn't buy Marilla for $29 million if it was near Kalgoorlie. So it's just part of the equation.
The thing that worries me most is people's perception of the risk
Yeah, sure.
and the market reaction, which I think is an overreaction. Because here we are 2 days later, and what has happened on the ground? Next to nothing.
But it's got to be fixed.
Of course. And it'll be fixed by the transition to the elections that they promised in what was an 18-month time frame, which still has 6 or 9 months to run. So.
I think the biggest, what's probably changed in Africa in this last decade or so, is that the regional organisations now have power. So this ECOWAS, the reason the military agreed to elections and transitional government relatively quickly was the regional pressure. And they can do sanctions and all sorts of things. They're dependent on the French, for example, to fight the guys thousands of kilometres away up in the Sahel and the Sahara. So I think we're in a different world now, a much more connected world, even in Africa. And the military just can't do this because those other countries do not want a precedent of transfer happening at the point of a gun. They want it done by elections. So I think that this all arises out of it's a poor country and people want better, and politicians on the take, but the military can only do so much because of the regional pressure. And the best thing we can do is people like Mike and the management understanding that. I have to one guy I didn't mention, is Seydou Semaga, who was our country manager, and Mike mentioned him, but I didn't. He's been fantastic. He has terrific access, as Mike mentioned, and he briefs us all the time. So we're very aware of it, and within what we can do, Mike and his team do what they can. Any other questions?
Just got one. In the last couple of days, there's been 60+ million shares change hands. I'd like to thank some of the people who threw out my way some shares. Was there any major changes amongst the top shareholders?
It takes a couple of days for that to wash through. I don't think there's been major changes. You know, at the end of the day, 60 million shares is only, what's that? It's not even 10% of the register. So I think there have been a little bit of movement, but I've had a number of calls with the major shareholders, and you know, I guess I gave the same responses that I've just given here now, which largely assured them. And the more institutional types have seen it all before and don't get too concerned by it. I think a lot of the churn is in the retail side of things, where, harsh but fair, I suspect, you know, the African risk is more perceived than real, and not born out of experience, you know, personal experience, should I say. But you know, we still have a pretty wide open register. At the end of the day, even though we've got a handful of institutional holders, there's nobody that's substantial. So nobody owns more than 5% of this company, and that in itself is an opportunity, because I think we will appeal to that more sophisticated institutional market once we deliver on these plans.
Any other questions? Or shall we adjourn to the bar? Well, once again, thank you very much for coming, and we appreciate the support, and we can have a more informal chat downstairs.
Thank you.